I'm Jenny Ray, the Managing Director of Management Consulted, and we're back today to bring you another installment in our Advanced Case Interview series. Today we're starting the first of a few deep dives into the strategy and style of some of the top firms' case interviews. In particular, today we're going to focus on McKinsey, and I'm going to walk through three pieces for each one of the firms that we're going to highlight. Today I'm going to talk about the style of McKinsey interviews. I'm going to talk specifically about the math, which is one place where you really notice differences. And then finally, I'm going to talk about some key tips on how to win at McKinsey interviews. So we hope that you enjoy this because here we're giving you some real great insider information. So let's get started. The first and most important thing that you probably need to know about McKinsey style interviews is that they are generally interviewer-led. It's really important that you make sure that you practice an interviewer-led case before walking into a McKinsey style case, because it is different than walking through a case where you're the boss. It's really helpful to make sure that you get the timing and the pacing down with an actual interviewer. And McKinsey does often offer the opportunity to practice a case with a buddy once you have a confirmed interview. If you can't practice with somebody who's currently at McKinsey, try to find somebody who worked there in the past, or work with one of our experts. We all cover McKinsey style cases, and we're very familiar with the way that their operators work the case as they're going through the process. The second thing that's helpful to understand about style is that McKinsey focuses on deep dives for key issues. Whereas some other cases go broad and expect you to cover the wide range of topics, McKinsey, using the interviewer-led format, really goes deep into certain areas that they want to explore. They're going to test not only your high-level understanding of a topic, but your ability to stay focused when they go and do a deep dive in a key area. So make sure that you're following the flow of the case and you don't get jarred by what may seem like you're jumping around. Usually, instead of jumping around, you're jumping into a deeper level of an issue that you're addressing in the case. The next thing that's really helpful to understand about style is that McKinsey cases are heavily quantitative, but the quantitative sections are usually very clearly delineated from the non-quantitative sections or the creative sections. So you'll have one section that will focus entirely on quantitative portions and another section that won't cover it at all. It will only be conceptual brainstorming. So in McKinsey, you go back and forth between one or the other types of cases. The fourth thing that you need to know about the style of a McKinsey interview is that they are generally highly formal. In fact, probably some of the most formal interviews that you'll go into. You don't want to be too chatty. You don't want to act too relaxed. You want to be very poised, on point, quick with your words, direct to the answer. They're incredibly formal. You're expected to be formal and pretty serious in the process. We've talked in the past about not being too serious, and that's true. You still want to act like you're enjoying it and having fun, but you don't want to act too chatty, too relaxed, or too blasé, because it will come across as though you're not client ready, in McKinsey's words. The second thing that you want to understand beyond the style of McKinsey interviews is how you do the math in McKinsey interviews. McKinsey math is something very special because each of the interviews have the math set up beforehand because the interviewer is leading you through it. They're expecting a lot of structure when you walk through the process. So let me explain some of the key areas of McKinsey math as we're walking through the process. The first thing that you need to know about McKinsey math is that it's usually multi-step algebra. Oftentimes, the prompts that they give you for the math include multiple pieces of data that you need to collect verbally. And then you'll have to lay out a structure. You'll have to identify if there's any points missing, and then you'll have to do the algebra in multiple steps. They're not just testing you on how your calculations are basically. They're testing you also on your ability to collect the data, manage it, and then also make sure that you identify what's missing. The key types of math that they use are market sizing math, where they often will leave one piece of the market sizing equation out, chart interpretation, where they'll have a data list of different pieces of data where they'll ask you to compare the data and gain the key insights from it. They'll also have segmentation data, where they'll break up one customer segment into different key segments and help you identify which one is maybe the most attractive or the least attractive as you're using different metrics. Across the board, these are the three most common types of math. Of course, they're able to test just about anything, but those are the most common types that you'll generally see. Like I've mentioned already, McKinsey often leaves one piece of data out. So it's really important in McKinsey cases to make sure that you identify what data you have and what might be missing. They don't usually leave more than one piece out. They're not leaving 2 or 3 pieces out. So you don't have to feel like you're missing everything. But there is often one piece that they do leave out. They want to make sure that you are mastering the data and the data is not mastering you. The final thing that's important to know about McKinsey math is that the end point of the math questions is not necessarily obvious. Sometimes when you come to the end of a McKinsey math piece, the thing that they're really looking for is your ability to interpret the number. So they're not just waiting for you to arrive at the answer, although the answer is correct. It's important that it's correct. It's important that you're not assuming around it, that you're getting the accurate answer, but they're also at the end looking for that extra special something, the interpretation of the data. So make sure that you're driving beyond just getting the correct answer that will match up with their answer key, but also interpreting the data for the key insights. So what are some key ways that you can make sure you win at McKinsey interviews? Well, first of all, if you've got a McKinsey interview in the first place, congratulations. They're pretty hard to come by. So you need to make sure that you walk into the interview and enjoy yourself. But we do have some specific tips for McKinsey style interviews that we want to lay out for you. The first thing is that McKinsey people, and in general McKinsey cases, require that you are highly structured. What I mean by that is that you don't generally want to look at general areas or key issues. You want to come out of the gate with an incredibly pointed structure where you're walking through each step along the way in a very almost what seems like jerky or jagged fashion. You want to make sure that you're isolating key issues and identifying what the core roots are, and that you're moving on quickly as you're doing that. The second thing that's helpful is that for McKinsey, you can often pause and ask for a minute if you need to collect your thoughts. Because structure is so important to the McKinsey interview, it's really critical that you make sure if you need it, you take time to plan so you're not caught in a trap of rambling on or going down a rabbit hole that you don't want to go onto. In general, still for McKinsey interviews, like all other interviews, you can't take time every step of the way along the case. But if you need it, they are generally more lenient for you to take a moment to prepare your thoughts as opposed to other types of case interviewers. The third thing that you need to know for McKinsey cases is that you need to make sure that you know where the math is headed. Oftentimes, if they give you a verbal data dump at the beginning of the math question, the end of it will be the hardest thing for you to catch because you'll be trying to keep up. But it's very critical that before you get started with the math, you confirm where the data is headed, that you know what the, for example, units of the final answer are supposed to be in so that you don't make a mistake. It's very common that I give cases to people where I'm asking for total market share, but they give me total revenues, or where I'm asking for the overall growth rate. They just give me the baseline profitability. So oftentimes in McKinsey cases, people can keep up to a certain point, but not all the way until the end. So before you get started with any calculations, make sure you've captured all the data. The fourth thing that's important to know and notes to win is that it's critical in McKinsey cases that you offer hypotheses whenever possible. McKinsey is the most hypothesis-driven firm. They care the most about hypotheses, and they really like to see them in their interviewers. So if you can give a hypothesis at the beginning of the case, especially if it's an intelligent and likely correct one, that's really going to work in your favor as you're working through the McKinsey case, because you can use each piece of the data that they then throw at you to either corroborate the hypothesis or work to reject it throughout the case. And the final thing that it's important to know is that for McKinsey, they're looking for a consistent internal structure. So not the overall structure. They're going to lead you through that. They're looking for a consistent internal structure every time they present a new question to you. And it involves 3 pieces. First of all, confirm what you heard. Second of all, add value by interpreting the information, offering new brainstorming ideas, or doing a calculation. And then finally, finish by pointing to the next step. One of the key traps that a lot of people fall into in McKinsey cases is that because they're interviewer-led, they sit back in their seats and they don't push themselves to think about what the interviewer is likely to do next. One of the best ways to win at McKinsey cases is to propose a next step that is similar to what the interviewer is thinking they want to do as well. So across the board, you've got some information now about the style of McKinsey interviews, you got information about McKinsey math, and finally you have information about the overall tips to win at McKinsey interviews. If you've got more questions or want to work with us in order to prepare for a McKinsey interview, please visit us at our website, managementconsulted.com.